What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So to start this season, some teams have smashed expectations like the Washington Capitals, Minnesota Wild, and Winnipeg Jets. And some teams thus far have come out massively short and have disappointed. And guess what we're talking about today? We are clearly talking about the latter. We are looking at the 8 most disappointing teams in the entire NHL, the worst quarter of the NHL in terms of levels of disappointment. And this is going to range from top tier contenders, as you can imagine, to even a team that was probably projected to finish bottom 6, bottom 7 by basically everybody. You can disappoint regardless of what your goals are in terms of overall team standings. This is going to be based on how they're doing in the standings. Are their young guys progressing? We're going to go through it right now. And up first at number 8, I got the Detroit Red Wings. I know, shocker that the Detroit Red Wings are in a video of mine that is not in a positive light, but I think that objectively Detroit kind of deserves to be in this, considering the fact that they are. I'm not saying everybody expected them to make the playoffs, but they're 6-7-1, and mind you, that is with getting 9-12 goaltending from Cam Talbot and Alex Lyon. I think that they could provide like a 905 the rest of the way, but to get a 912 and still be below 500, and when looking at a guy like Cam Talbot that last year, he's up there in age, last year started off so good, but as the season continued to go, he started to play game 35, 40, 45. He fell off a decent amount in the back half of the season, and Detroit's underlying numbers do not suggest that they're going to be able to overcome this in such a loaded Eastern Conference. They have a 47.95% expected goals percentage of 5-on-5, which is 23rd in the entire NHL, and that drops all the way down to 45.77 at 5-on-5. That's 27th in the NHL, on top of seeing guys that they let walk, and Shane Gothisper, as well as trade like Jake Wallman, although Wallman did get healthy scratch recently, play pretty good in their new spots. It's a little bit disappointing for Detroit Red Wings fans. I'm not trying to say it's a disaster because, again, objectively, most people did not have this team in the playoffs, but it's a little bit disappointing. Lucas Raymond and Mort Seider are playing pretty good. They're fully established themselves as very good NHLers, but have not really taken that next step towards stardom early on in the season. Raymond 13 points in 14 games. Seider yet again on pace for like 45-ish points. It's not a disastrous start, but it's definitely disappointing considering the massive steps they took last year. It's looking like they're going to be they're going to be around the 11th to 12th best team in the Eastern Conference, maybe even worse. Next up at number 7, I got the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, context is massive for the Colorado Avalanche. If we're going solely off results, they might be top 3 in this list. But when you add the context of them dealing with so many goddamn injuries to start this season, to guys like Arturi Lekin and Jonathan Drouin and Ross Colton, Nitrusins and player assistance program, obviously Landeskog is hopefully coming back at some point. I'm going to forgive them for their forward play, and I think their defense play has been fine. It's just that coming into the season, we knew that goaltending was such a deficiency for this team. Alexander Georgiev has an 851, and Justus Annunen has been better, but he still has an 894. So the biggest problem with this team was goaltending. It is just, they have like a bottom 10 tandem in the entire NHL, and it has only gotten worse in this year. So it's concerning for the Washington, for the Colorado Avalanche. It is definitely disappointing of a start, and especially when looking at the goaltending in the Central Division, where they'll probably hopefully have to go throughout the playoffs. You got guys like Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, Philip Gustafson's bouncing back, as well as UC Soros if Nashville makes a run. They are at such a deficiency in terms of the goaltending right now. Number 6, the Edmonton Oilers, in a similar boat to Colorado. I expect them to get back on track, but it is still unacceptable. This start for the Edmonton Oilers. Stuart Skinner has an 883 and has allowed at least 3 goals in 8 out of his 10 games. That is an insane number. This guy, although he did show up at times in the playoffs last year, is just not a true number 1 on an actual contender at this point. They can't fix it this season. No one's going to be giving up that caliber of a player mid-season. But again, like with the Colorado Avalanche, your biggest deficiency has proved true. Darnell Nurse, yet again, kind of floundering on that second pair. They do not have a guy that can kind of anchor him, and he shouldn't need an anchor. He makes $9.25 million. But that other weakness is also scary. I'm not too worried about Arvidsson and Skinner. I think they're going to start cooking, but we knew the forward core was going to be good. There's still question marks outside of that top pair, and obviously in net, it's a pretty disappointing start for the Edmonton Oilers. Next up, we got the Anaheim Ducks at number 5. And again, this is the one team that I said, I still was high on them, but I had them as like the 6th or 7th worst team in the entire NHL. But it's how they've played outside of goaltending. Dostal has been amazing. He is solidifying himself as your future number 1 goaltender. He has a 922 and has played 11 out of their 13 games. They still have a 4-7-2 record despite that. That is impressively bad when you are getting that good of goaltending. They're scoring just 2.08 goals per game right now. The next closest team, the team that's in 31st, is the San Jose Sharks, all the way up at 2.4 goals per game. And that 2.08 would be the lowest mark since the 2000 Red Wings that put up like 44 pace. They were one of the worst teams in the entire 21st century. So yeah, it is very concerning. I think a lot of that does fall on Cronin, but some of their offensive guys are just not taking that next step. My boy Leo Carlson, 6 points in 13 games. Zegras looks lost out there, 3 points in 13 games. Minchikov, 2 points in 12 games. Their guys aren't even just plateauing. They're taking a step back relative to prior years. It is very disappointing. Maybe you fire the coach. Maybe that changes everything, but they have the worst 5-on-5 analytics in the entire NHL, third worst in all situations. I didn't expect a 2023 Devils level jump, but I expected them to go from 59 points last year with like horrible injuries. Like most of their key players missed at least like 10 games. They're on pace for 63 points right now. That is without a doubt very disappointing. A lot of it does fall on Cronin, but still, they should be much better regardless with the roster that they do have. It's not an amazing roster, but it's not a 63-point roster at this stage in the rebuild. Next up, we got my New York Islanders sitting at 500. It is definitely concerning right now for my Islanders when looking at guys like Barzal's obviously hurt, but he wasn't even playing good before he got hurt. Him and Bo Horvat were not really offering much on that first round, as well as Anthony Duclair obviously is hurt. That first line wasn't even cooking that much when they were fully healthy. Duclair, Pelech out multiple weeks going forward. The defense core, the reinforcements. Isaiah George has been very strong, but outside of that, it has not really been that impressive. Speaking of defensemen, their number one defenseman that had 70 points last year, Noah Dobson, has 6 assists, 0 of which are goals right now, and has not scored in the last 6 games, basically since these big injuries have gone down and you expect your better players to step up. That has not been the case with Noah Dobson. He is losing himself a lot of money, which I don't want to see. I want to see him break out, and we have to pay him $9 million. I would love to say, I see Islanders fans being happy that he's going to take some cheap deal. I want to fucking win now, and I want to play good right now. So it has been very disappointing for Noah Dobson. The only positives are Sorokin, after having a down year last year, had back surgery. He has a 916. He has 4.4 goals saved above expected. He's reverting back to a top 5 goalie in the NHL, as well as Soplakov, their rookie, their 25 or 26-year-old Russian rookie, has been very good. And him in that second line with Palmieri and Nelson are the only line that is really cooking right now for my New York Islanders. But yeah, overall, very disappointing start, especially when you're blowing leads, most recently to the New Jersey Devils, like you did last year. For number 3, I got the Seattle Kraken. I could definitely see you having my Islanders ahead of the Seattle Kraken in terms of disappointment, but I think after Seattle went so aggressive in this free agency, getting a guy like Brandon Montour, getting guys like Chandler Stevenson's in their late 20s, or they're either 30 years old, on these 7-year deals, you're expecting to be competing at the early half of those deals, considering that the back half's going to be absolutely atrocious. This team is 6-8-1, and when looking at the Western Conference playoff picture, I think we can agree Minnesota went from missing the playoffs to probably now making the playoffs. Where's Seattle's spot? I say they have like a 10 to 15% chance, because now with Minnesota making it, there's only 3 spots for both Nashville, Colorado. There's only 2 spots for Nashville, Colorado, Edmonton, Seattle, and I don't even know who else would be in the mix. St. Louis, I guess, at this point, but probably not. Seattle is yet again not going to make the playoffs. I think that 2023 season, this might sound crazy, was kind of like the worst thing to happen for them, because it gave them this false ego, especially to Ron Francis, that they were close to actually competing at a high level, when in reality, they're not a bad team. I don't think they're going to keep this level of pace. They're probably going to be an 85-ish point team, but they are just aggressively average. They are aggressively average. They have a better prospect pool than my New York Islanders. Long term, they're in a better spot, but it is very disappointing that they went out, spent all this money, and it's looking like they're not going to be good for the next 2 to 3 years. And then once Berkeley Cadden, once Shane Wright, once some of their prospects hit and are good players, they're going to have those deals, as well as the Adam Larson extension, just weighing them down. They're in a really kind of bad spot going forward, in my opinion. And number 2, I got the Boston Bruins. They're my cup finalist prediction before the season, and they are shitting the bed right now. They're sitting at 7-7-2, and 109 points last year, one around in the playoffs. You go out, you get Lindholm, you get Zadorov. Yes, you do lose Olmark, but you're expected to contend at a high level. In the first 2 weeks of the season, their fourth line carried them to half decent record. Their middle six is not producing. The underlying numbers are not encouraging either. They're right on the cusp of the bottom third in the end. They're 22nd in both expected goals, 5-on-5 in all situations. It has not been good. I still think they can make the playoffs, because I think some spots in the Eastern Conference, especially wild card spots, are really up to grabs relative to the Western Conference, where I think we kind of know the 8 or 9 teams at this point, probably eight teams if the team we're going to get to at number 1 doesn't pick it up. But East is still open, and I think once they get in there, they can be a very dangerous team. I think they are built for the playoffs, but for this Boston Bruins team that has obviously safely made the playoffs the last 2 seasons, this has been very disappointing of a start. And at number 1, no shocker here, the Nashville Predators. go so aggressive this offseason, and early on it is not paying off. Steven Stamkos, 8 points in 15 games. Only 2 of those are even strength. Jonathan Marchessault, 9 points. Only 3 of those are even strength, and he has not been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal all season. Brady Shea, 6 points in 15 games. 43.7% expected goals percentage at 5-on-5 when he's on the ice. When he's off the ice, Nashville Predators, when he's not on the ice, have a 52.4% expected goals percentage. That is not good when you're viewed as the no doubt number 2 defenseman on your team and you have such a shit relative goal percentage. Trotz is already talking about a rebuild. It is bad for Nashville. I think you definitely play it out this season, maybe even next season, and then you blow it up. But for the Nashville Predators that made the playoffs off the back of a 16-point streak last year, 16-game unbeaten streak, to have this start, it is very underwhelming. And again, UC Saros has a 911 save percentage. It's not like he's playing like shit. This team is just kind of old and kind of aging at this point. Very disappointing for the Nashville Predators. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Who would you put on? Who would you take out? I'll be seeing you in the next one.